I do research, but as a practitioner. I'm not a lecturer, but I do research as a practitioner. So most of this is based on my experience as a researcher. And I'm also an early career researcher, so we are learning together. So today, the session, I would like us to, it's just two outcomes. One is to be able to reflect on the main activities that are required of us as we are doing our research. And the other is to also reflect on the skills. What skills do I need to know to learn so that I can be able to navigate this research journey? And then, of course, looking at the common challenges. So I'd like us to reflect, and I'm going to be inviting questions in between, asking you to just pause and see what is holding you back. What skills are you currently lacking that are hindering you from moving in your research? Because most people get A's in their research methodology class, and I know most of you passed really well. But when it comes to writing the actual paper, it becomes a bit difficult. It's not because people don't know the what. Most people are struggling with the how. How do I do it? And within the how, most people are struggling with what skills, particular skills that really help you move your research project as a researcher. And I'd like us to reflect on those today. The other thing is now to be able to identify the skills that you need to develop. As we always say at the Africana Journal Club, yes, it's good to graduate with your PhD and your master's, but the most important steps in growing you, even if you will not be a researcher in future, in growing the scholar in you is the journey in between. The time you entered your training and the time of graduation. What are you learning? What skills are you learning? Because some people can graduate with a PhD or a master's, but they do not have skills. And we are going to look at those skills. They can't write well. They can't do a good presentation. They can't make a good argumentation. So for us, what we insist, it's good to celebrate the graduation, but it's also more important to see how far have I come? What skills have I gained as I've been in my journey that I'm going to use even in my professional work? I work as a consultant, a development consultant, and all the research skills that I learned over time, I use them. I write reports, I do research. I write reports, I do research, I do data analysis, I speak in meetings. All these skills are very important for you and I to nurture. So now let us look at what we are calling a checklist. But before that, I'd like us to look at research as a story. I always say our research projects are stories about people and our world. And the reason why I use the word story is because sometimes research can feel very abstract. There's a methodology there, there is a problem statement there, there is where you're writing your reflections and your interpretation, and sometimes the story is lost. So I always encourage us to think about what story am I telling? Maybe like for me now, the master's, which I have been doing for many years, I've also delayed. I'm telling the story of aging people in informal settlement. And I'm telling their story on how age, gender, and marginalization, how does that shape experiences of healthcare experiences, especially person-centered healthcare experiences? So that's the story I'm giving. But if I just leave it at my problem statement is this, I'll miss the big picture. And sometimes, I don't know if you've seen yourself, sometimes you struggle to tell people, what are you writing about? And people are even asking you, so what? So why is this important? That's why I really encourage us to frame our research as a story. I'm telling a story about the waters in Africa, or I'm telling a story about learning in Africa, curriculums, whatever. Put the story. Why is this story important? And why research is also very critical is because we are using our voice and weaving it with other voices to tell our story. That is very different from someone who is just giving an opinion piece in a newspaper. As what we are doing, we are using our own voice, our own experience, our own knowledge, and then weaving that with the voices of others, and then creating new knowledge, creating something interesting that people can read. That's why we read literature. That's why research in itself is a collaboration. We already, the minute you start saying, I'm doing a research, you'll start collaborating. Why? Because you start reading other people's work. What have people said about, like for me now when I'm doing aging, what have people said about aging population and person-centered care? And then I will build my story based on that. Okay, so that's why it's so important in our story to know what is the story, but more important, why am I telling? Like for me now, I have to really be very clear. Why is it important for us to know about aging people and healthcare and person-centered care? Why gender matters? Why marginalization? Why is that important? And that I will derive by reading other people's work, my own experience, and then weaving my story. And then we have to also see, how do I tell? And this is where the research designs come in. What methodologies do I use to tell? Do I use numbers only? Do I use stories and numbers? Do I only use stories? Do I use pictures? Do I just observe? So all this, when you frame it this way, then it makes the journey also interesting. Even when you meet the people you're going to interview, it means that you're going to excite them. Because when you go to collect data, the people you're asking about data, imagine if you're telling them the story of your research rather than saying, oh, my problem is this, I want to find out this. If you weave it as a story, people will even be interested to participate in your research and helping them understand why it matters and why it matters now. Okay, so have that in your mind as you're thinking about research. So what skills do we need for us to be able to do our research? Because I think this is the part now where the rubber hits the road. I've never used that phrase, actually. I'm not sure if I've used it correctly, but this is where the problems start. The skills that we need to tell our story. And I've divided this into research skill. How do we develop this skill? What resources do we need? And how to check that you have this skill. Okay, maybe before I go to that one, I can just pause and make it a bit more interactive. What skills in research have you found very important in this research journey? Can we hear a few? What skills have you found that you needed? Or what skills have you seen yourself use? You can unmute or you can put on chat. Anyone? What skills are you finding are really demanded of you? Synthesizing literature. Thank you, Han. Synthesizing literature. And we are going to see what is to synthesize literature, because we say we are weaving our voice with other voices. What if you have met 100 voices that are talking about what you're saying? How will you tell one story when you have interacted with 100 voices and your voice is there too? So that's where synthesis come. Okay, so reading. How much reading are we doing in our research? And of course, we have been through primary school, we have been through high school, we have been reading, but alas, we now are reading differently. When we are trying to access other voices, it calls us to read a little bit more differently. Okay, so reading skills is something that has been analytical skills, being able to break down information into smaller bits and bring it back again to make sense. Analyzing, being able to ask questions, being able to read beyond what you're seeing and pull out assumptions. Okay, there's a reflex even in publication. let me see, I'm preparing my first PhD. Okay. Even publication, using citation. Yes, we have said we are using other voices to tell our story, but we have to cite them. We have to acknowledge them. So how do we cite them? How do we use citation managers to make our work easier? So these are the skills that sometimes are not emphasized, and then now it becomes very difficult for us to move in our research. So let's see, data analysis. Oh, sorry.
We are saying skills of identifying the problem.
Yes. Even the skill of identifying a problem is another problem. How, of all, and it's so interesting because we live in a world, especially if you're in this part of the world, the global south, we have so many problems. One would think it would be so easy to just find a problem, and because there's so many, like the minute you wake up, there is enough on the news to tell us there are so many problems. But what is different in scholarly work that, yes, we can see many problems, but then we have to think about it a bit more deeply. We have to consult other people who've talked about that problem to see what they said about that problem. You see, so it becomes a little bit complicated when it comes to scholarly research work, because it's not just me knowing there's a problem. I also need to trace the journey of this problem. I need to see who has addressed this problem. I need to see what is being done, and then what can I say about it, okay? Statistical skills, being able to tell stories with the numbers we find, being able to tell stories, to analyze data in a way people can understand. What are you trying to find out? So those are skills that I think when you're being trained our research, they are not emphasized, but they are so critical. Okay. So these are the skills that I thought we can talk about. One is critical reading skills. How do you develop these? You have to read. This is the where they say if you want to enjoy food, you have to eat the food. If you want to develop your critical reading, you have to read. What are you reading? You're reading abstracts. You're reading methods, conclusion before you read the full paper. Okay, this is a technique that I was trained on when I was doing my master's, how to really understand quickly what a paper is saying. Because before, we used to read everything. Then after you finish, you're like, I don't even know what this paper is about. So training yourself to quickly read an abstract, get the sense of the paper. What is this paper about? If someone just called you and said, I've seen you read 3 papers, tell me 1, 2, 3, what are they about? You can quickly tell. Being able to read the method section and then the conclusion. So this is what the person was writing about. This is how they did it. This is what they're concluding before you read the full paper. That's a technique you can work on. The resources you need journals, you review articles, be on Google Scholar, just training your mind to read. How do you know you have grown this skill? When you see yourself being able to summarize 3 or 4 papers in 1 or 2 sentences. That's when you know that you're able to pick key points. You're able to know the papers that are saying the same thing and put it together, that you can critically pick out the main points in a paper. That is not easy. I know when we used to do reading, it's only that unfortunate that in our universities, we don't do reading skills classes for masters and PhD. But I remember when we used to do these classes, most of us missed the point. We were saying the sub point, not the main point. But if you see yourself, you're able to do a good summary of 1 or 2 sentences of ideas that you've put together, then you know that you're improving in your critical reading skills. Literature searching. Yes, we want to know the voices of other people, but how do we get them? How do we search for literature? Another important skill. Being able to refine keywords. Do you know the Boolean operators that help us how to search? You know the words that you add. How do you put and? When do you put or? All those Boolean words. How do you track citations? Okay. And the resources are all on Scopus. They are all on this Google Scholar. Make use of your libraries. I think this is something we have emphasized. Befriend your librarian in your university. Even if it's to go to your university once, just go there, befriend them, and they can help you in the literature searches. How do you know you're getting good at searching literature? You can consistently find relevant recent studies. If you find yourself, you're always looking up for studies, but they are not well peer reviewed, they are old, it means still your skill has not been strengthened. And this is something that you can strengthen. And the reason I'm giving this is for us now to map out for ourselves this year, what skills are we going to develop? Remember, it's good to graduate, but if you graduate missing out these things, they're going to haunt you. Like for me, as a consultant, I have to use all these. I have to critically read. I have to look for reports. How do I do that? These are the skills. This is the training ground. Use your master's and your PhD as the training ground. Don't use it as being an expert. No, this is where you drop down everything you have and say, let me learn. Let me make all the mistakes and learn all I can. Synthesizing literature. Being able to create summary tables using concept maps. You can use Excel. Being able to read literature and put it in those tables. So at a glance, you can be able to see what different voices are saying. How do you know you've gotten this skill? You're able to explain patterns and debates of different papers, not just one paper. If you find yourself having challenges to bring together ideas that people are saying, and you can only say what one person is saying, it means still you're struggling with synthesizing. Synthesis is where you collect all these voices, weave them, and say, these are the patterns I can see, these are the debates that are emerging, and all that. Okay, so synthesizing is a very important skill. Problem formulation, I think most of us are there. Problems are there, but then how do we formulate it for scholarly work? The only way to be able to develop problems, statements, and being able to formulate problems, develop as many as possible and get feedback. I think for most of us, we work in darkness. Even sometimes in our club, we call members to present their paper so that they can get feedback. And many people shy away and they miss out on such an important opportunity to get feedback. Even on the problem statement, you just come and say, this is what I'm thinking about. This is why I'm thinking about this way. And this is how I'm going to study this problem. Get feedback. Go and refine it until you have a clear problem statement. Otherwise, if you keep it silent, it is quietly hidden, you're working in isolation, problem statement of formulation, you need feedback. So that finally someone can say, yes, your problem is specific, it is researchable, it is well justified. There are many skills, so I'll also go quickly. The other skill is developing the research questions. And how do you know you can, and this is through many versions, even the research question, do many times, get feedback from peers, from your supervisor, from other lecturers that you know. Get feedback. Someone is writing on the slides, please don't. So get feedback, write it until it reads well. So that now your questions are very clear. And when you're doing your research, you will be able to answer this question. You know, sometimes you can ask some research questions, which eventually you can't answer the question. You have the data, but the question is so vague, you can't answer it. So the only way to counter this, do many iterations of the research questions, get feedback until it reads well. Research design selection, selecting the right design for your research question. That's a very important skill, because you can have the most beautiful, researchable question, but the design is not aligned. And once there is misalignment, it means you cannot answer that question. So that's another skill. And why am I saying this is because even as we are doing our PhD and masters, we should be enrolling in courses, in other courses that are strengthening these skills. Like the other day, I'm doing a master's, yes, the second one, but I enrolled in a research course that was being offered by some university it's an online course, but it's offered by WHO and some Swiss university. And I just said, yes, I'm doing this, but I'm feeling I need to strengthen, especially mixed methods. And I enrolled in the class. I even, it was not free, it was part funded, so you had to pay something. I even paid. And someone said, but why are you paying for these courses and you're doing your master's? But I said, it's not about the qualification. I want to grow these skills. So even you don't shy away from registering for courses, even free ones, where you can learn research design. If you're struggling to know which design is good for my study, don't graduate without knowing these things, because no one else will teach you. Enroll for a class quickly, a few weeks, learn about it, read about it. We have Rising Scholars. I don't know if you know Rising Scholars. This is a program I'm part of, very passionate about, is developed by the organization called INASP. And they have many research related courses that we, and even including critical thinking class session, we encourage you, enroll, improve your skills as you're writing your paper, okay? Such a webinar like this one I'm doing is not enough for you. You need to go and do the actual course so that you can learn the skill. Developing data tools. Can you develop data tools? You know, valid, and this only comes by trying and then having someone validate them for you. And then sampling skills. Are you able to sample a population? Are you able to recruit people for your study? If you see you're still struggling to even know who is the appropriate study, take a sampling course. And practice defining inclusion-exclusion criteria. That will really help you. Like that course I took in that WHO course, it really emphasized how to do inclusion-exclusion criteria. That will really help you to be knowing who is in my study and who is excluded. How do you know that you're good in this? You can clearly explain who your participants are and why. Not just who they are, you can actually say, why are they your participants? Ethical awareness. Because most people just write informed consent, confidentiality. Do you know what they really mean? So being able, how do you develop these skills? You review many papers, read the ethics part. How did they do their ethics? If the study is similar to the one you want to do, read the ethics. What did they do? If it is a gender-based violence studies like the one I do, is very different from a normal, any other study. So you also have to pay closer attention. And so how do you know you have learned the skill of being an ethical researcher? You're able to identify proactively ethical risks before they happen. If you see, you can tell, I think if we go this way, it's going to be risky, then you know you're getting good at that skill. It's not just good to say informed consent, confidentiality. Do you know when risks are happening? Do you know how to navigate those risks and dilemma? That is when you know you're developing the skill. How do you organize your data? Do you know the skills of organizing data? You've collected so much, but where is this data? Is it on your laptop? Do you know how to label data? Do you know how to code? Do you know how to develop a code book? Can you use Excel? Can you use NVivo, at least one software, even the open source one? How do you know this? Can you locate your data and explain each data set easily? Data analysis skills. I know for us in this part of the world, we outsource data analysis. In other parts of the world, students do their actual analysis. But it's important, even if you will not do your entire analysis, which it's sad, but that's the situation because we are also not very well trained, at least understand what the data analysts will be doing and guide them. So at least practice data samples, being able to explain your findings, to answer your question is when you know you can analyze data, because some people leave everything to the data analyst and they cannot even answer the question. Interpretation skills. This one is core. Yes, you have collected data, but then most people now, when it comes to the writing the findings, they're just reporting like a newspaper. This one said and this one said, but they're not giving us what they said. What then does it mean in the context of your study, with the theories you are using, in the research question you are asking? What do these findings mean? So how do you know you've developed this study, this skill? If you find yourself moving beyond describing data to giving your data what it means, then you know you're developing your interpretation skills. Okay? The other skills, there are quite many. Academic writing skills. This is how you write. And how do you develop your writing muscle? Because we are not born with it. You have to write. If you want to enjoy a good meal of food, you have to eat it. You have to write regularly. You're writing things, you're writing small chunks, you're using writing guides. How do you know that your writing is improving? When it becomes very clear, it is structured, it is coherent, it is logical. We are moving from point A to B to C, that's when now you know that your writing is improving. But if people read your work and then they're saying, it is not focused, I think I'm reading your work, I'm not getting the point, then you know you're still in the journey. Argumentation. In research, we are trying to convince people our research matters. Even when there is evidence, we are trying to tell them it matters and it matters because of this. So how we argue, and today I'll show you a framework I learned recently that can help you as you package your argument. How do you put out your claims? Remember, we are always making claims. Like for me to say, aging people, I'm making a claim like aging people are struggling to access healthcare. That's a claim. If I leave it at that with no evidence, then it remains just an opinion. So how do we argue out our point so that they are convincing and people can understand? So how do you know you're improving your argumentation? Your claims are well supported by data and literature. That's when someone is saying you are making a good argument. It's not just an opinion. You know where your data is. Referencing skills, using the different softwares that are there. Project planning. Remember, our research is called a research project. So in essence, we are project managers. So what are the skills does a project manager need? First, we need to break our journey into milestones. Point A, we need a work plan. We need a budget. We need people. So have in mind that you're managing a project so that then your pieces are ready and they're fitting together. When you see yourself, you're meeting deadlines and you're not losing out on this, you know that you're doing well in your project planning. Someone is writing, I don't know who, feedback use. Are you able to use the feedback? Some of us receive comments from our supervisor, but we can't use them. It is also a skill, learning how to read feedback and use it to improve our work. Okay, so that's something you can also work on. How can I be understanding? Sometimes, of course, we have supervisors who don't give clear feedback, but sometimes they have clear feedback, but we are not understanding it. So that's when we find ourselves using feedback to improve our work, that's when we know we are doing well. Documentation skills. Are you able to document what you're doing to justify your decisions? and then, of course, resilience. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the skills that I feel are so important that we have to grow within our journey so that when we graduate, so that they stop saying that the graduates of these days are half-baked. Why does that come? Because we don't know some things. Someone cannot reference well. They don't even know one single reference in software, and they have a PhD and they have a master's. No, that cannot be us. We are going to grow our skills as we are developing our paper. So let me see on chat, amongst all these skills, which 2 skills are you going to prioritize for this year? Let me see. Let's move to action, which, of course, it should be all, but maybe you're good in some. Let's see, maybe 5. Let's say 5. What 5 skills do you feel you need to work on to get your paper moving? Some you could already be good at, but others you're really struggling. Let's see on chat. Let's see. What skills are we going to nurture this year? As I said, most of us already have the A in the research methodology. It is the how that is complicating our life. Okay, let us see the skills. Data analysis, reading, and academic writing. Okay, please, Carista, disenable annotations for others. Feedback, how to use feedback. And the beauty, my dear researchers, is all this information is available online, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on different courses, all these trainings are available. You just enroll, you just say, this month, I'm going to concentrate on my writing skills. This month, I'm going to concentrate on my documentation skills. I'm going to look at my data. At least let me know, even if not completely, let me know one software. Let me know what is data analysis and what do we analyze. That's how now you start growing as a researcher, a skilled researcher. Because most of us, when you do PhDs, will be lecturers or consultants. And these are the skills we will be using. For others, maybe they'll be employed in. Even when you're employed, you need to write well. Even if AI is writing, you need to be able to know when AI is making mistakes. Okay? So I wanted to show you, so keep them coming. I wanted to show you a framework that you can use that I learned recently. I had known the one for writing a paragraph, for write a topic sentence, then you make the claim and all, but I think this one is equally good. So this is how do you structure an academic argumentation? So first you make a point, you make a claim, and this can be paragraph by paragraph, because this is the reason most of us get the feedback like your work is not clear, it is not focused, it is too vague. So when you're writing a paragraph, you make a claim. And on this other side I've written, the claim is remote work increases employee productivity. Now, for some people, they will just leave it like that. And then now an array of questions will follow. What do you mean? What? But then now once you make a claim, you have to give a reason. Why are you making this claim? And look at the way you can give a reason. The reason why remote work increases employee productivity is because employees working remotely have greater control over their work environment and their time, and this reduces interruptions. You've made the claim, you've given the reason. That is not enough. Show evidence that truly remote work increases productivity. Now, the evidence is a 2022 study of over 1,600 knowledge workers found that remote employees completed 13% more tasks per day than in-office counterparts and reported higher concentration levels. Then you put your reference. Then that's not enough. We now need to close it. If you leave it there, someone is like, okay, so what now? Close it. And now that's putting the point again, restating it. Therefore, By minimizing distractions and increasing autonomy, remote work can lead to measurable gains in productivity. Imagine if you wrote your paper like this, paragraph by paragraph. As you make a claim, you give a reason, you give evidence, and this is now what makes good writers. If you read good reports, this is how they're written. You're not just saying things and leaving people wondering, huh? Why are we saying this? What is the reason? Where is the evidence? So what? You are concluding it. Okay? I don't know how many have used this. It doesn't have to be this exact prep framework, but how many of you have used this type of way to structure how you're writing? Anyone? You can unmute. Anyone? You can put on chat. Is this how we are writing our work?
No.
If you're not, no. Okay.
Yes.
Is it a good way? Is this something you can try?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Because then this evidence, what you're saying, it becomes so powerful. You've already shown the evidence. No one can refute it. But if your work is always stopping at claims or at reasons, then your work becomes very light, and then it doesn't make you a very strong scholar. So remember, the end game is not graduation. The end game is to qualify as a skilled scholar, a skilled professional, who even in the workplace, when they tell you write a report, you are exceptional because you already trained yourself, okay? So that's one I wanted to emphasize. Then there is this other one that I have always shared, how to develop your authoritative voice in your writing. And this is when we talked about the 3 voices that you use when you're writing. I'm just pulling out some of the skills I've learned over time that I use. There are 3 voices we use when we are writing. One is the direct voice. This is when we use quotations. And there are not many in our work. We use something has been written so nicely, we cannot paraphrase it, we cannot summarize. We want to pick it as is because it's really powerfully saying what we want. And that's the direct voice. Then we also have the indirect voice. Indirect voice is the taking other people's work and then we summarize it or paraphrase it. So this one is very common. We use it a lot in our work where you say, I argue along Monene 2020 that. So you're using another voice to tell an indirect voice. It's not you, it's not the direct voice because you're summarizing it to tell your story. The other very important voice, which sometimes has not been encouraged in our part of the world, is our own voice. What is your voice saying about this thing? What are you saying? And as you can see from this type of claim, maybe your voice was making the claim that remote work increases employee productivity, but you needed another voice from Bloom to show the evidence of that claim. So always we are using these 3 voices when you are writing. And this is an example of how you can write well. And this was developed by Professor Auma. This is not my work. She developed it and told me to share it in the Africana Journal Club. So I've been sharing over the years. So this is how someone can write beautifully. And I've just indicated where they are using their own voice. So own voice most of the time is when we are making a claim, you know. So this person starts their paper off with their paragraph with their own voice. Then quickly they move to other voices, indirect voices of Baker, of Ricardo, Woodgate, to emphasize why they're saying this, okay? They're giving a reason. And then they now go again and use their own voice, mixing with indirect voice. They haven't used any quotation. So you see, if you're weaving your voice this way, that's why I told you in research, we are weaving our voice and other voices. So you can see if you're writing this way, you become very strong in the points you're making. And this goes, even if your research is quantitative, remember, most of it is written before it is the data is collected. So this is how you continuously weave your voice, and then it becomes so powerful, okay? But some people only have their voice in their paper, only their voice. Others just quote, quote, quote with no other voices. Or others, their voice is not there. This one said, this one said, this one said, this one said. Then someone will say, but you, the researcher, what are you saying? Okay, so that is very important for us as scholarly writers to learn. So now, do you have any questions before we now look at a quick checklist? This one you already know, but I thought it's good to emphasize the different levels. Do we have any questions? Okay. If no questions, let us see the people who are selecting topics. What steps await you? And there are many. I will not go through, but I'll share the slides, all this, but there are many steps towards getting your topic. One is identifying your area of interest. That's very important. And how do you identify your area of interest? You reflect on your discipline. All of us have done coursework before we did the research. The reason why we do coursework is to give us theories, is to help us understand our discipline nicely. So you go back to what you did in your coursework. What did I learn about this topic? Like for me, when we did health, we learned about aging and it piqued my interest. And I was like, that's an area I want to research on. So reflect on those, on your discipline, on your own experience. Don't invalidate your experience. And so how I've categorized this is the step, how you do it, the things that you need, and then the skills that you need for that particular area, and the common mistakes we do. For instance, most people choose trendy topics. Like when COVID was there, everyone was writing about COVID. Then some of us delayed with our projects. COVID ended. Now our research doesn't excite anyone. So it's important to really reflect and self-reflection when you're doing your. So let me just read the steps for the topic selection. And then as you read on the side, you can be able to see what you need to develop. So identifying an area of interest. Then go to the literature. There is no way you can identify a topic without reading. That one was emphasized by my supervisor. You have to consult what other people have said about it. You're not the only one to talk about it. You're not the only one to think about it. Go back and see, what are people saying about this? What are policymakers saying about this? What are scholars saying about this? What are the opinion pieces saying about this? So different people, they don't have to be all scholarly. Even the social media, what are people saying about this topic, so that you get a sense of it. So this is where you're skimming databases, reading, but then you're also quite strategic. You're not going to be reading everything. Then you start identifying themes and debates. Like when I started looking at, I want to write about aging and person-centered care, I immediately, as I was reading, I saw another debate coming up on patient-centered care. And me, I knew person-centered care. I said, what's up with patient-centered care? What is this concept? And when I read a bit about it, I saw it's the concept that came before person-centered. And that was exciting for me. I was like, okay, so there's an evolution of a concept. Why did it evolve? So those are the debates you're picking out. What are the debates around your topic? For instance, can some people share on chat? Do you know what are the debates around your topic? So for me, the debates I picked was, people are now debating, do we say patient-centered care? Do we do person-centered care? And then in person-centered care, which is the one now I'm using, there are also debates. How is it done actually? It's so good in theory, but in practice, it seems impossible. So for you, are you being able to identify themes and debates in your own work? In the problem you're reading? Like famously, the main debate in childhood studies, those who are doing childhood, is the definition of a child. The one we often know is the one a child is below 18. But do you know there are three other definitions of defining a child? And those are the debates. that that you need to pull out so that you can choose on what side of the debate you're in. Like, so for me, I decided I'm going to choose person-centered care as a core concept for my study because I think that debate makes sense to me. So that's why your problem has to also move to that level. Otherwise, it will just be a problem which you're not sure how did it start, where did it come from. Like people who write about sustainable development, I always say, do you know that concept came in the 80s? Do you know do you know the concept you're thinking about? Where did it come from? Who brought it in the world? You know, that's the level of the problem topic I think it's important to go to, so that you now know, where am I starting with this topic? So that you're not starting in 2025 when people have been talking about this thing for the last years. It has evolved. Sometimes some concepts have already been kicked out and you're still using them. Then the other step is now going to identify the research gap. So I've seen the debates, I've seen what people are reading, but I'm seeing there's something missing, either theoretically, either methodologically, either empirically. We don't have data. Something is missing. And then now you start narrowing the scope. You start now saying, okay, too much out there. Which one can I take? Which one can I take? You know, like for me, I saw so much has been said about aging and all that, but I saw there's a gap. People are not talking, how does age, gender, and marginalization shape how people experience person-centered care? And I said, good, that's the only thing I'll talk about in this paper. Then now you draft the research question. After you've read, and you're like, okay, let me attempt to draft a question and see, what am I really asking? And then you check the feasibility. Do I have time to answer this question? Do I have access? Do I have the ethical clearance? Like my university said, absolutely, they cannot clear a study that is going to deal with gender-based violence or sexual reproductive health. And they had written a very nice proposal, and they said, sorry, we will not accept it. So find out, is your university also in line with the topics you're choosing? And then go to your supervisor and refine it. So I think if you follow these processes for the topic, it might guide you. I don't know what you think, but it might guide you to help you move quickly to the research question, because what you want to transition to topic is to the research question. That's what you're moving towards. What will I ask eventually? So that then you transition to your problem statement. Your problem statement, that's now where you want to end up. And the steps now for the proposal, that's why now you start going to the proposal. And the proposal is, I'm proposing to study this. That's when now you go to define your problem. You review your literature in your proposal. Those who are working on their proposal, these are some of the steps you can follow. And these are the common mistakes. These are the skills you need to grow. These are the skills you need to refine your questions, to select a design. Which design will answer my question? Which methods will answer my question? What sample? Which people will participate? What analysis? How will I analyze this data? What ethical considerations will I have? What time budgets? How will I revise? So the reason I added the how and the things needed and the skills to grow and the common mistakes is because this is never told. So most of us know steps, but we don't know how to do it. Okay, so I've tried to explain the how, the sampling strategy, all these things, and you can see the skills I talked about, how they come to be important in these processes. Then now you come to collecting your data. Do you have your approvals? Have you finished your instruments? Are you piloting? Most of us don't pilot, maybe because we don't have time and money, but piloting is so important because it really helps you to see, do I have the right group? Will I even be able to collect data? Some of us are stuck because people have refused to answer their questions. And I usually see them come on the club and say, please answer my question. And I always say, were we your sample group when you were designing your study? Were we the ones really? Because people have refused to answer. So piloting helps you. And I want to say, talk to the people you want to involve in your study very early on in your proposal stage, so that you know if they will participate or not, so that you don't waste your time. You may go to collect data and people are like, no, we are not interested. Recruiting your participants, another important step. Then you collect the data. Then you monitor the quality. Where will you store your data? Then you document your decision. So in the how, you will see how you can do that, what you need, the kind of tools you need, what skills you need to grow, and the common mistakes that people do. Okay? Data loss, biased sampling, you're not doing a pilot, your questions are, your research, your questionnaire is asking questions which are not linked to the main question. So when you finish your research, you cannot answer. Okay? So those are the steps that are very important for the data collection. Data analysis steps: prepare the data. How do you clean it? Select an approach. Of course, now you've already matched. How are you going to analyze? If you're using a particular design, follow the design to the letter. When I use this design, when I use maybe a cohort study or whatever type of design, how is a cohort study data analyzed? And then you look at that. What is analyzed? What do I need? What do I need to answer my question? Then do the initial analysis just to explore what are the patterns, what are you seeing? Then a full analysis. Maybe you can engage a data analyst. Please don't engage a data analyst if you want to engage one very late. Involve them quite early. Record your decision, interpret your findings, and then you validate your results. The common mistakes we make: rushing, overinterpreting your data, inconsistent data, you've not documented, your data is very descriptive, you're not linking it to literature to make more sense. You're just making claims, this one said, but you're not linking it to literature. So it becomes very weak. And then your reporting. Do you have an outline? Your writing methods. You write your discussion. You address the limitations of your study. Draft your conclusion. Edit, format, disseminate. Okay? So these steps, I know you know the steps. It is the how to undergo those steps, which is closely linked to the skills we talked about, that is most disturbing. Okay? How to interpret your literature, how to report your data outputs, and some of the mistakes we make: you have not planned for your discussion section, you're mixing your sections, you're doing last minute work, you have no dissemination plan. Of course, for us, it's a supervisor, but remember, if you're going to do a defense, we need to do good slides. I saw a very interesting message today on how you can also do you know how to make good presentation slides for your study. So these are the steps that I thought I could just put them like this so that you can see what you need. And of course, you can add more, and the common mistakes that we make that we need to watch out for when we are developing the different parts of our study. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of what I had for us today. And I don't know if we have any questions, but I thought I would share that with you today to help you really go deep into what is hidden in this journey that is never told, but sometimes come to haunt us, especially the skills that we need to develop. Yes, piloting does not preempt. Even for me as a consultant, the clients we work with, we have to pilot to be able to see, are my questions reading well? There's a time we did a pilot on gender. I do gender work. And the word gender was used in the questionnaire, and people did not even understand. When we piloted it, people are not understanding. So we had to go and redo the tools in a way that people actually understood what we are asking for. So piloting really helps to streamline your assumptions about your population. It really, really helps and saves you time. Okay? You don't pilot the same participants you're going to include in your study. You look for a group that is the same as that one, but different, same criteria, same inclusion criteria, but not the same ones, so that now you can see if truly you're going to get good data. Remember, at the end of the day, you need good data to answer the question that you've told us you're asking. Okay, any questions? Thank you, thank you. Yes, this is how you write paragraphs, Cecilia, to make them strong, to make them sensible. Someone sees, yes. So you won't even have many corrections. And you won't even, I see people saying, where is Turnitin? I want to run my work. I have never used Turnitin. Because if you write your paragraphs this way, it means you have no plagiarism. Where is the plagiarism coming from? Because you're referencing well, you know when you're making a claim, you will not have those problems. Okay. So thank you. I see no questions. For me, I'll just say, have a good evening. We are together. If you're not in the journal club, Kagendo will put the link here so that you can join. We've been here for many years. Many years. I think this is our 8th year. We have many students from different parts of Africa, especially the world, who join our sessions. We do monthly webinars. We also do research presentations where we ask members, come present your study, get feedback. The only way you can grow in your research is feedback. Without feedback, you will not move. You will just be rotating and then you feel frustrated. So, yes. So always, even if someone once asked me, I'm doing a qualitative study, do I need to show statistical evidence in my literature review? Absolutely, yes. You have to do it. Even if you're doing a qual study, show statistics where they matter. Like mine is a fully qualitative study. And I've shown all the demographic transitions that are happening, how we are aging. I'm showing I'm building the argument so that the supervisor can see this topic is important. Remember, you're trying to convince people this topic is important. And the only way is to unearth late evidence, showing latest evidence is saying this is where we are going, this. Yes, Millicent. You have a question? Millicent or Tina?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. I thank you so much. I was able to present my proposal in the platform of African Journal, and I've finished now the corrections. Now I usually go on and off breaking, but I finished and actually for defense. But now there is an area which is actually it's like I'm not very familiar with it because I'm working on sportswear for disabled athletes and specifically sitting volleyball players. So after reading, I discovered that my research design is explanatory, sequential, mixed methods, whereby I'm doing survey to find out the trends of their issues with their sportswear. After that, I'm doing in-depth study to collect now more, more to actually complement on the survey. After that, I'm supposed to do fabric test of various sportswear fabrics which are available in the market. And my issue was like after the sportswear, I'm supposed to do prototype development. Now, the problem was the sample size, estimating the sample size for the prototype. Those who are going to do the wear trial after I have developed the prototype, and the estimation of the number of prototypes I'm supposed to do. Because now the mixed method, now coming to the populating of the prototypes and the selecting the sample that is now going to participate in the wear trial. That is one thing that has really been actually disturbing me.
Okay. Is it something you are running with your supervisor? And I remember your study, very interesting. Is it something you've spoken about with your supervisor? Because now you're saying the problem is now getting the sample of the population that will be prototyped, right?
Yes.
And it's a problem because...
Like usually, I think the last time I was presented, they asked me, how did you decide on the number of prototypes to make, and how did you decide what formula did you use to select the sample size that are supposed to now participate in the wear trials? I've talked with my supervisor, but he was just telling me to just go ahead and present the way I've written, and then they should correct me if they feel like it is not right. I think my supervisor wants me to move on because according to him, I just need to move on.
Okay, it's interesting. You're also sensing they want you to move on. I think it's... okay, I don't know what other members will say, but I'm feeling like, yeah, it's important that you justify your sampling. Why this number? Why not another number? I think that's really important. Even if you're going to present, it might come up, it might, even if it doesn't come up, it might be quite important. I think for now, let it not hold you back for your paper. Go present. If that comes up, then you have an opportunity to ask for help at that time, even from them, and tell them that this is an area that I've also received feedback on, and I'd like some help. How do I, because of course there are formulas of sampling, I don't know if you used those. How do I justify the sampling that I'm going to use for my prototype? So I think let it not hold you back, defend, get it as a feedback, and then improve on it with the help of your supervisor. And if they don't help you, bring it back here. We can try and see. There are many people who are great at sampling. They can really help you. There is also Mogenda and Mogendi, or the research book, the famous research book. But I'll say move ahead. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Move. Feedback, improve. Move. Don't let, if you're stuck in anything, write it as you see it, then get feedback. Here we are pursuing progress over perfection.
Okay.
Progress over perfection. So move, because always remember, we are students, we are learning. We are not meant to be perfect. This is the time we are making all the mistakes. So do it as you understand it, then let the feedback help you grow. And this is then the opportunity for you to know how to do the sampling and learn from it.
Okay, thank you very much for that feedback.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any other question, good people. I want to say thank you for being here. We are always happy to be supporting the research journeys of each other. Our Global South needs us. It needs good researchers. Please remember, prioritize the skills you're going to develop this year. For me, the skill I want to develop this year, I want to be very good at NVivo. Surprisingly, it's one of the courses we offer as a paid course in the club. But this year, I want to be good at NVivo so that I stop outsourcing it for my work, and also I'll be able to use it for my research. So look for the skill that you really need to develop this year, so that when you have the masters, if someone says, come and design for us a study, write us a report, you are good to go. Remember, there are no jobs these days. So jobs will also go to people who show some level of, they can do good work. And this is our training ground. Let us train. And when we qualify, we shall really be great people. Okay? Jomvi is what? I don't know, Mtambaruka. So goodbye. It's Friday here. We have dinners to make. Gender roles never end. So I wish you well. and be safe. Yes. Yeah, do take care and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.